Welcome to the Positively No Gambling Podcast, the pro football show that is definitely not about betting. My name is Glenn Fraser. It is Wednesday, August 20th, and this is the 2025 team preview for the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins, fun team to talk about. Okay, so the preview format will ask two big questions from the start of the offseason, recap 2024, preview 2025, look at some advanced stats and trends, and some look ahead lines that we like going into the 2025 season. We'll conclude on those two big questions and then give out a preliminary over-under pick for season win totals. The final picks will be done during the AFC NFC previews posted right before the start of the season. Okay, so in terms of the two big questions regarding the Dolphins, did they improve their defense? Because that is the weakness. And can Tua be great? And maybe that should be modified as can Tua be any better? Can he be a leader and lead this team to playoff victories? That is the two big questions for the Dolphins. So recap of 24, there were 8 and 9, which was good for second in the AFC East, but not good enough to make the playoffs. Started off 2-6, which was Tua got hurt here, and I don't think he came back until much later on in the season. So part of it was a tougher schedule, part of it was Tua, but most of it was Tua being out. They were just bleak. They lost to Seattle. They were anemic on offense. Tennessee, they were absolutely awful on offense. Um, some more things to point out. They were 1-4 versus eventual playoff teams, which is obviously not great, but also they didn't play that many playoff teams. So the 8-9 record a little bit skewed because of how easy their schedule was, which was the easiest schedule in football and the luckiest schedule in football, defining schedule luck as the expectation of their schedule based on the 2024 opening over-unders for the teams that they played versus where they actually ended up uh, being in terms of how many wins they had. So, an example, they played the Jets twice. Obviously, the Jets underachieved. They played the Niners, significantly underachieved. Um, the Raiders had a bad record. The Pats had a bad record. The Titans had a bad record. Um, that schedule was really soft. And another thing to note with Miami, they didn't overachieve or underachieve. They were exactly what their record said, which was a perfectly mediocre team. This is like the defining 8-9 team. And with that said, let's look at their 2025 offensive overview. They lost a couple of guys, nothing crazy. Raheem Mostert, Braxton Berrios, nothing really of note that they lost. They added James Daniels, a guard from Pittsburgh. They added Nick Westbrook-Ikhine from Tennessee, who's definitely going to be their third target in terms of wide receivers. They drafted Savanea from in the draft, so they've replaced their guards with draft picks and free agents. They added Alexander Madison, who's at least a name from Vegas, but he'll back up Devon Achane. Beyond that, nothing else of note. Blue chips, I'll still put Tyreek Hill here because of his talent, but took a big step back last year. Achane, Aaron Brewer, their center, Savanea are high potential. The X factor, put two guys. Tua is just without, you don't even need to say it. He's always the X factor. Without him, their offense is terrible. With him, their offense is pretty damn good, but he's not been good enough to win games against the great teams or win playoff games. And Jalen Waddle as well. 2 or 3 seasons ago, when this was a real dynamic offense that was high paced and high octane and scoring 1 million points a game, it was because of how good Tua was getting the ball out quick, the movement, Hill, Waddle. That took a step back last year, even before the Tua injury in the game and a quarter that they played with him healthy to start the season. They didn't look right ever. And make or break, without a doubt, McDaniel. He is. I know he's got a contract. I know this is not necessarily a ownership group that is known for having no patience, but he's on the hot seat without a doubt. If they don't start off really hot, this is a guy. The rumors are going to start with him. Now the defense. This is the key to this team going into the 25 season. And without getting into the guys yet, just visually speaking, there's talent here without a doubt. Jalen Phillips, Chop Robinson, interior linebackers are good. Bradley Chubb, okay, fine. He's probably on the backside of his career, but he's a talented guy. Minka Fitzpatrick, they got from Pittsburgh, is talented. So there's talent here without a doubt, but this is not known for a team known for their defense and specifically around the secondary. We'll get into the real red flags that jump out here. Now let's talk about who they lost, who they gained. Javon Holland, good safety, went to the Giants. Calais Campbell, the ageless one, went back home to the Cardinals. Those are two significant losses. We talked about Deshaun Hand when we previewed the Chargers. They lost him. Ogba, edge, went to Jacksonville. Beyond that, nothing of note, but that's a lot of guys. In terms of what they added, they drafted Kenneth Grant, with their first round pick. They added Ashton Davis as a safety to effectively replace Holland. They also added Minka Fitzpatrick in their trade when they traded with Pittsburgh. They added Artie Burns, who is on the PUP list now, so he's not listed in here. That was a potentially decent pickup, expected to fortify that secondary, but that secondary looks terrible right now. Blue chips, they don't have a blue chip, but they have a lot of high potential guys. Talked about Chop Robinson, Jalen Phillips, Kenneth Grant was a highly touted prospect, and the secondary is the X factor. The guys that they're bringing in, I don't see it. I don't know many people that see it, but if they did hit with these free agencies, with these trade pickups, maybe you're talking about a much better secondary than expected. And then now you combine them with a pretty damn good linebacking core, and maybe you nailed the draft pick. This could be a better defense than people are giving them credit for, which, if the offense returns to form and the defense is significantly improved, now you're talking about a potential wild card team. Make or break, Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator. To me, everyone's on the hot seat when it comes to the coaches in Miami. Look at the 25 schedule preview. Because the division stinks and they got kind of a favorable matchup luck when it comes to who they have to play, still an easy schedule. Another one of these tough home schedules, easy road schedule split for Miami, which is, I guess, beneficial because the Dolphins are really, really good against the spread at home. They tend to overperform league average. in terms of covering spreads. Part of that is probably just they don't get enough respect nationally, so the lines don't tend to be uh, a point or two higher than they should be at home, which tends to happen for teams like Green Bay and Kansas City. But they're a good home team, especially early on in the season. That brutally hot atmosphere in Miami that all their players are used to playing in tend to be a nightmare for the road teams. This schedule looks easy to start in Indy, home against the Pats. At Buffalo is always tough. Home against the Jets and at Carolina. These are bad teams from last season, obviously, besides Buffalo. Sure, we think the Pats might be a little bit better, but that's a schedule. And even into week 7 and week 8, I mean, at Cleveland, at Atlanta, these are winnable games, and they're going to have to win those games because leading into the bye, even though these are home games, Buffalo, Baltimore, Buffalo, and Washington, I mean, that could easily be 3 losses. And if you lose any of these other games that you really shouldn't, this could be a disaster, a season that never really goes anywhere with Miami. Let's look at some of the more advanced stuff from last season. They were exactly what their record said last year. They had an 8.0 Pythagorean expectation and 8 wins. No surprises. Close game. They were 4-4. Turnover differential of fumbles -5. That will revert. That's a positive one to look at. From 23 to 24, they lost 3 more games in 24 versus 23 when they went to the playoffs. That's definitely a decent looking stat. We talked about the schedule changes and the schedule luck. That will revert. How much that impacts current year schedule, we'll see. The O line and the D line, the O line was definitely vulnerable at pass protection and run protection. They went out and got those guards. They're expecting that to fortify that line. Maybe the run protection gets better and they become one of the better run teams in the league like they were a couple of years ago. D line, I mean, I think they're a little underrated in terms of how good and varied their pass rushers are, but it didn't really mean anything last season. Now, looking at the early against the spread look ahead lines. Week 4, I 5-starred that being early on in the season in Miami. They're a 4.5 point favorite, which on paper, is a little bit much, but I think the way that the Jets play on the road, combined with the way that Miami plays at home, they've won these games, they've covered these games in recent past. I love Miami in week 4 against the Jets. Other ones, both AFC, NFC, sorry, South opponents. Week 5 at the Panthers, they're only a 1 point favorite. And week 8 at the Falcons, they are a 1 point dog. Good matchups in both of those games. We already talked about having to take advantage of the early home games. That's without, you don't even need to say it. Without that, they're not going to come close to the playoffs. Some contradictory indicators, which would suggest this is probably another sort of mediocre year, which could spell disaster. And even though they might be a mediocre team talent-wise, they could be a very bad team record-wise. A lot of people just automatically hate this team and don't think they're going to come close to the playoffs. They think New England's going to leapfrog them. Some even think the Jets will leapfrog them in the division. I'm not as pessimistic as others. But having said that, their over-unders 8.5. I love that one. I don't expect them to complete for the playoffs, but I'm not as pessimistic. Like we said, the vibes are just really, really bad. I know that there's no stat around that, but I don't like really anything that I'm seeing from this team. Did the coach lose the locker room before the season even started? I don't know. Um, which brings me to sort of the conclusion here. If once they post the first coach fired odds, unless it's just not worth your while, it's worth throwing a bet on Miami being the first team to move on from their head coach. And they could technically get back to a great offense, but is this going to show up against the great teams that they have to face? I don't think so. So I'm going to go under here. I know I say strong, but I'm still debating this one. 8.5 is just the perfect over under for this team because it's not high enough to where I'm automatically going to go under like some are, but it's not low enough to where I think there's any value in taking the over. So I'm going to ruminate on this one, but right now it's an under. So that concludes Miami. Tomorrow we'll be looking at Minnesota, the Vikings, which is another really fun, interesting team to talk about in terms of their preview for 25. Well, thanks. Have a good one.